population on the government's preparation for the potential impact of the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Joining me in studio this morning are the Ministers of Public Utilities, Minister Marvin Gonzalez, the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, the Honorable Faris Al-Rawi, and the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan. Also joining us this morning in studio is retired Major General Rodney Smart, the CEO of the ODPM, and joining us virtually is Mr. Shakir Beg, who is the Director of Met Services. I will pass off now to Minister Al-Rawi, who will give us the initial update.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Please, we apologize for the change in time frame. We were just awaiting the most recent release from the Met Service, which has in fact been issued and is now out as their final statement in this current format. And even though we'll hear from them, just to put it into context, the final statement coming in at 12:16 is an official statement number 15. It is the final statement coming from the Met Office. Effectively and in summary, Tobago is under hurricane warning. Trinidad is under storm watch and storm warning specifically. This means, as we'll hear from the Met Office shortly, that we must prepare and engage in coordination of all agencies. Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, as first responder on the ground, has together with colleague ministries, that is Ministry of Works and Transport, Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Health. We have been in full coordinated meetings over the last 3 days in particular, as we've been looking at what was once AL95 and is now Hurricane Beryl. Hurricane Beryl is currently a Category 3 hurricane, expected and quite simply to pass just north of Tobago, meaning that Tobago will therefore receive the outer effects of the hurricane as that passes between Tobago and Barbados. The north coast of Trinidad is in particular watch zone, but ladies and gentlemen, at Rural Development, we have issued several statements which say, number one, that there has been significant saturation of our soils in the weather system that affected us yesterday and the day before. Secondly, that what is now Hurricane Beryl will produce as of tonight, beginning just after nightfall in Tobago and a little bit later in Trinidad, more weather patterns involving high winds, rainfall, and very importantly, choppy seas, high alert warnings on the seas, which we'll come to separately. And following that, by Wednesday, we should see the effects of another system just behind Beryl. That system is currently under watch. It's not fully in focus, but it's known as AL96. So in summary, we expect significant continuation of rainfall and saturation with the effect of one, the current system that just ended this morning, two, the commencement of Beryl beginning by nightfall this afternoon, three, with a system coming just after that. That means that until Wednesday, we are to expect significant rainfall. Accordingly, the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government convened meetings with all stakeholders, ODPM, and all municipal corporations, disaster management units, TNTech, Fire Services, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Public Utilities, WASA, all agencies, Ministry of Works, etc. And we have activated the preparations for commencement of sheltering, distribution of sandbags, and emergency supplies, chainsaws, positions, etc. The Minister of Works and Transport will take us through the location and spotting of assets along the north coast to treat with what is going to be expected landslips and events. And he will also report to us on the operationality of water gates, sluices, and pumps, The Ministry of Housing, through the HDC, has reported preparedness at all HDC sites with confirmation of working of pumps, etc. Specifically as it relates to the island of Tobago, I have, on behalf of the government, been in direct communication with the Chief Secretary, the Honorable Farley Augustine, who is in full command of the Tobago end from a governmental side of that perspective. The ODPM and TEMA are the lead agencies in Tobago. The Minister of Public Utilities will report shortly on WASA's operationality and TNTEC's operationality, and the Minister of Works and Transport will speak to the matters of the ferry systems, flights, and Ministry of Works and Transport's assistance to the island of Tobago. The Chief Secretary intends, all things being equal after briefings, he's alerted me to the fact that Tobago will have a press conference somewhere between 2:30 and 3 o'clock this afternoon, so we stand by on that. The final summary point that I wish to address is with respect to the Ministry of Education. The island of Tobago will specifically speak to schools and the opening or closure of schools if necessary at its press conference. The island of Trinidad will later this afternoon, after consultation and lead by the Minister of Education, together with the agencies that are in first response right now, inform the public as to what the situation will be tomorrow. Please remember, ladies and gentlemen, that runoff of water is going to be key in low-lying and flood areas, and therefore we need to pay attention to the low tide and high tide phenomenon. Secondly, the soils are in fact significantly saturated as a result of the current weather system and will continue to be heavily saturated straight up until after Wednesday. The pooling of water in typical areas, woodlands in the south of Trinidad, the Cuva, Tabaqui, Talparo areas, the city of San Fernando around the Cipero River, Guaracara River, the areas in the north of Trinidad at Bamboo number 1, number 2, and number 3, all of the flood-prone areas have been the subject of attention and preparation for the rainy and hurricane season. That notwithstanding, the volume of waters is going to be key in this regard. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government will issue to the public, commencing immediately after this conference, the identification and listing of all emergency shelters, disaster management units, the sites for the collection of sandbags and equipments, tarpaulins that are expected to be needed will be used by the first responders as we get into the event beginning at nightfall this afternoon. We also expect to be able to provide you with a full listing of sites that we have secured for parking. Residents of low-lying communities that experience flooding traditionally and who have cars that are at risk, you're invited to attend and use the parking facilities at a number of locations that we have secured and which we will publish shortly, where the Trinidad and Tobago Municipal Police, as well as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with other agencies, will ensure that there is adequate security. That, in a nutshell, is the overview for now. I'll rejoin you later as I pass back over to Minister of Communications to tee off the other contributions.
Thank you very much, Minister Rawi. Let's go now to Director Big for an update from the Met Service. No audio.
Thank you very much, Minister, Honorable Ministers. Good afternoon, and to our viewing public and the general citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago. As you are aware, the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service has been closely monitoring this weather system, which is now known as Hurricane Beryl, over the last few days, and we have been issuing official statements on this system since its very inception as AL95 and its development into a tropical depression, and when it got the name Beryl upon reaching tropical storm status. At this time, tropical Hurricane Beryl is located near 10.0 degrees north latitude, 55.9 degrees west longitude, and that puts the hurricane about 640 kilometers to the east of Tobago. This very powerful hurricane is moving westward with a slight northerly track near 34 kilometers per hour and has at this time maximum sustained winds of 195 kilometers per hour with higher gusts. The fact that it has this sustained wind of 195 kilometers per hour puts this hurricane at category 3. The National Hurricane Center has investigated this hurricane utilizing one of the Hurricane Hunter aircrafts as early as this morning, and they did discover that we have hurricane force winds up to category 3, with the forecast of this hurricane intensifying to category 4 before making landfall and impacting the southern Caribbean region. We have Tobago at this time under a hurricane warning. The Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service has responsibility for issuing watches and warnings for Grenada and its dependencies, and we have done this well ahead of time. So Grenada and its dependencies, they are under a hurricane warning, as well as St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and Barbados. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Martinique, and just a couple, maybe an hour and 40 minutes ago, we did in fact place Trinidad under a tropical storm watch. This arose as a result of the data which we acquired from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft through the National Hurricane Center, which discovered that the storm force winds were emanating to about 70 nautical miles out of the center of the system. As a result of this, there is the possibility of northern Trinidad experiencing some storm force winds as the system tracks across the Windward Islands. So that data prompted us to place our island, Trinidad, under a tropical storm watch. Ladies and gentlemen, and our viewing public, you know, as Beryl approaches the Windward Islands, and this is going to occur overnight into the morning on Monday, June the 1st, there's a high chance, there's a good 60 to 80% probability that hurricane force winds will impact on Tobago from as early as midnight into tomorrow morning. And this is extremely important. The impacts of these, you know, can be devastating. We have spoken, and Minister did indicate this in his opening remarks. Tobago and Mr. Alan Stewart and Tima, they are well on top of this situation, and they're making all of the necessary preparations. The hurricane is expected to intensify. This is a forecast coming out of the National Hurricane Center. And so we're all keeping a close eye on this hurricane for further development. We're very early in the hurricane season, and you know, it is, you know, it is a record-breaking instance in this case to have a Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane move through the southern Windward Islands this early in the season. It's a lesson for all of us, therefore, that, you know, we're entering into a very hyperactive hurricane season, and being prepared will be exactly what will be the message, you know, with the passage of the system, and as we prepare for other systems as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Big. Let's now hear from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management and its CEO, retired Major General Rodney Smart.
Thank you very much, Minister. and good afternoon to the viewing and listening audience. Taking off from where Director Big spoke to, the ODPM has been in constant contact with the Met Service as well as the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, recognizing that Trinidad and Tobago as well as other Caribbean islands, especially those in the Southern Caribbean, which fall under Trinidad and Tobago's responsibility within the Caribbean system, we have been speaking and liaising with these bodies and coordinating to ensure that we have the best response possible, so that as the system has intensified, we too have ramped up our operations. And we have brought together national agencies, governmental agencies. We've been liaising with the private sector. We've been liaising with civil society organizations. And all the national organizations, all these organizations have indicated their readiness to be able to assist. Of course, our emphasis has been on Tobago as well as on the North Coast. But we want to emphasize to the whole of Trinidad and Tobago for us all to be prepared. We would recall last month we had the National Disaster Prevention and Preparedness Month. And it is for this very reason that we selected May, so that the country could begin focusing its efforts, because we had anticipated something like this could have happened. We must recognize that we're living in an era of climate change. All the national agencies, therefore, have confirmed their readiness and are ready to go, as well as those agencies that will provide support to the nation. I want to ask you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, to emphasize beyond what we did last month. You now prepare yourself. Prepare yourself, prepare your family, prepare your community. We've heard from the minister that we could expect extreme rainy weather. We can also expect high winds. We can expect flooding. If these are the hazards that are going to befall us, we must prepare for them. It means that if you have hanging trees over your roofs, you have to move them. It also means that if your guttering isn't clean, you have to treat with it. We want to implore you, we will be flooded. And please do not walk in flooded waters unless you have to. Please do not drive in flooded waters. We recall in Sandy Grande 2 years ago where there were people moving in flooded water who nearly drowned. So we want to ask you, please, the ODPM has been putting out a number of information guidelines to the public. We invite you to go to the website. We also invite you to go to the website of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, the website of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, and there you will get additional pointers. But I want to also emphasize, in the event that you must leave your home, do ensure that you have a grab and go bag ready. Do ensure that you have meals for at least 3 days ready. And most importantly, do ensure that you consider, if you have pets, that you need to take care of your pets as well. We want to emphasize to the folks in Tobago, the fisher folk, as well as those on the North Coast, if we are going to expect high wind gusts, there will be storm surge. And therefore, you must now start considering what you're going to do with your boat and your nets, etc. Finally, I want to say to the national community, there's no need to panic. Think through what you need to do now with your family. Think about a plan. If you are stabilized in your home, perfect. If you must move from your home, you must now start thinking that through. The ODPM always urge, have a family preparedness plan. So we want to say to you, now is the time for you to start focusing your attention. We expect to start having rainfall in the next 6 to 8 hours. You must prepare for that. And it's going to get worse after that. But we can make it through. We've done this before. We can make it through as a nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, retired Major General Smart. Let us now go to Minister Marvin Gonzalez to get an update from the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good afternoon to my colleague ministers, as well as the public officials who would have joined us in studio and online. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. I wish to start by commending the folks at the Meteorological Services Division of the Ministry of Public Utilities who have been in constant contact with their colleagues at the National Hurricane Center to provide the necessary advisories and update to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as some parts of the Eastern Caribbean, on this incoming weather system. As a result of that, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has been putting in place quietly the appropriate measures in place to prepare the people of Trinidad and Tobago so that we can take the appropriate precautionary measures to ensure that we protect ourselves and our families. I'm proud to say that the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, the Water and Sewage Authority, the Solid Waste Management Company of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as TSTT, have all put in place the appropriate measures to be able to respond to the fallout of the impact of this incoming weather system. With respect to the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, an area command center has been set up in Scarborough, and they are monitoring closely the impact of this system. Based on the advisories and the information that we have received from the Met Office, a lot of focus will be placed on the windward side of Tobago. And that is for that reason, we have set up a mobile generator staging facility at Shore Park. We have ensured that all our emergency vehicles from the Commission are staged at Shore Park in Tobago to ensure that we can respond decisively and in a critical manner to any reports of disruption on that part of the island. Crews have been mobilized. They're on standby. Rations have been placed in effect to ensure that our crews are taken care of. And we're ensuring that all our private contractors are strategically placed to be able to respond to any reports of disruption. It is almost inevitable that in weather situations like that, you will have disruption on your electricity grid as well as your water grid throughout the impacted areas. What is important is that we put in place the necessary measures to be able to respond in a safe manner so that our crews are safe and their families, so that they can respond almost on an instantaneous manner as soon as it is safe to do so, to provide safety to all of the residents in the impacted areas. And as a result of that, we have ensured that the necessary vehicles, equipment, etc., they are all strategically placed on the windward side of Tobago to be able to respond to reports of disruption on the island. Satellite phones have been tested and they have been deemed workable in the event that we have any disruption on our phone systems. With respect to the Water and Sewage Authority, a number of equipment have also been mobilized. Excavators, etc., have been placed in to focus on the northern part of Tobago, the windward part of Tobago, sorry, and the northern part of Trinidad. That is in the event that WASA's water infrastructure that can obviously be impacted as a result of the weather system that is approaching the island. All standby generators that have been put in place to support these facilities have been fueled. We have also stockpiled on chemicals to provide up to at least 5 days of supply to some of the water treatment facilities. We have also ensured that our bonded contractors have been mobilized and they are deployed to be able to provide the necessary support to WASA emergency crews. WASA operators have also been monitoring our emergency shelters to ensure that we have a sufficient supply of water in the event that citizens have to report to some of these emergency centers to protect themselves and their families. We have also operationalized our OCC, our Operational Command Center, even though it has not been formally commissioned as yet. The OCC has been put into full operation to ensure that we have 24-hour monitoring of all WASA's infrastructure so that we can update the population on what is taking place. Both WASA and TNTEC have been in constant communication to ensure that there is an expeditious response to any scenarios where WASA's infrastructure is impacted or is likely to be impacted by the incoming weather system. So both WASA, TNTEC, as well as the other agencies, TSTT, etc., they are providing the necessary support to each other to ensure that we mitigate the potential impact of disruptions to its infrastructure as a result of the incoming weather system. TSTT has also advised that they are in contact with TEMA as well as the ODPM. Their contractors have all been mobilized as well to be able to respond to reports of disruptions both in Tobago and in Trinidad. Again, I wish to assure the population that additional fuel stores have been identified in Lowlands, Kings Bay, Charlottesville, and some of those areas that are likely to feel the full brunt of the weather system that is incoming and may likely impact the northern part of Trinidad as well as the windward part of Tobago. The Solid Waste Management Company of Trinidad and Tobago has also advised that in the event of cleanup operation post the passage of the Hurricane Beryl, all of our landfills will be open to ensure cleanup operations in Trinidad as well as in Tobago. We will be providing, the swim call will be providing the appropriate support to the Ministry of Rural Development and other state agencies in the cleanup operation. So in a nutshell, TNTEC, WASA, TSTT, swim call, they are mobilized. We have put the appropriate resources in place to provide the necessary support to ensure that we mitigate the impact of disruptions on our electricity, water, and our TSTT and communication grid. We have put the appropriate systems in place to be able to respond decisively. Our crews are fully mobilized. And just to reiterate, there's absolutely no need for panic. What we are doing is putting in place the necessary systems, taking the necessary precautionary measures so that we can mitigate the impact of Hurricane Beryl. A very important point I wish to make in conclusion is that we should pay close attention to the advisory by the Meteorological Services of Trinidad and Tobago. During this time, there is a constant habit where unauthorized persons and news sites put information out that can cause severe panic in the national population. I want to advise citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to be very careful of the information that you expose yourself and your family to. Pay close attention to the advisories being disseminated by the TTMS and the ODPM and all official government information. Having the accurate and appropriate information so that we can take precautionary measures to protect ourselves and our families is very, very important. And we advise you to be very cautious about receiving information from unauthorized sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Gonzalez. Let's now turn to Minister Rohan Sinanan as he gives us an update from the Ministry of Works and Transport. Minister.
Good afternoon, all. From the Ministry of Works and Transport perspective, our update to you will take the form of the transportation first, where our main focus right now is to ensure that the airport and the port of Port of Spain and the port of Scarborough, both airports, Trinidad and Tobago, remain open until, and if the need be because of the change in the weather condition, we do have to put any closure or so. Updates from Caribbean Airlines, all flights are on schedule today. They are adding additional flights. They have actually added 2 already, and based on the requirements going forward for the rest of the evening, Carl will add additional flights to ensure that whoever wants to come from Tobago to Trinidad, once the weather conditions remain, they will accommodate. In terms of the ferry service at the port have added an additional sailing from Tobago to Trinidad, and they are increasing the passenger capacity as well on some of the other sailings. The port will remain open until such conditions change, and if need be, then we may have to look in terms of securing the assets on both the port and the airport. As of now, both the port and the airport remain open. All CAL flights are on schedule, with additional flights being added, and the port, the same applies. In terms of our preparedness for the low-lying areas where we have pumps and gates that manage the flow of water, I'm happy to report that all the pumps are up and running, all the gates are up and running, and we have enough capacity in terms of fuel and so on, all these areas, to ensure that we should have no stoppage in the event that we have to do pumping of water and the securing of the gates. However, we have always reiterated that flooding has to do with the capacity of the channel and the volume of rainfall. We do anticipate a significant amount of rainfall, and obviously our infrastructure will be challenged. So we do expect flooding, especially in the low-lying areas. What we ask is that, we try to refrain, as advised by the ODPM, from entering into these low-lying areas because, as mentioned before, the saturation on our soils have already taken place. And sometimes under the flood water, you really do not know what actually exists. So if you can avoid going into the floodplains, the low-lying areas, so that we can actually, get that water running off as fast as possible. And if we have to get infrastructure, equipment, and so inside, at least we will be able to go in and out in a short space of time. In terms of the equipment and the spotting equipment at different sites, the ministry have already started to put and place equipment at different areas where we anticipate, based on the history, that we will get landslips, fallen trees, and so. But again, because of the saturation of the soil, it is not advisable that you traverse these areas if you don't have to. Because sometimes what we find is getting equipment in and out of these areas is really challenged based on the amount of people, because in Trinidad we love to go and look at certain areas. We like to virtually go out and see where the landslips are. What these things do is they prevent us and the first responders from actually getting in once the area is safe. So what we advise is, please do not traverse these areas if you don't have to, because we know that because of the saturation of the soils, we will get landslips and so in some of these areas. But we are quite prepared. This is not the first time we are doing it. As Minister of Works and Transport, this is my 8th year of actually being prepared for this time of the year. We are prepared. There's no need to panic. But what we ask is for cooperation from all the citizens, and we will ensure that at the end of this period, that we will bring back life to some level of normalcy in the shortest possible time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Sinanan. Before we go to the media for questions, can I ask that Minister Al-Rawi just give us a final wrap-up from the first responders' perspective and local government?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Folks, in very quick summary, we have very saturated soils because of existing weather conditions. We're going to get more saturation beginning at nightfall in Tobago, and definitely by midnight to 2 a.m. North Coast, etc. High tide and low tide are very important phenomena that we have to pay attention to. The next low tide, the next high tide and low tide figures are, next low tide is at 6:15 p.m. this afternoon, and the next high tide is going to be at midnight. So the tide is going to be high when significant rain is coming. As we know, apart from the serious conditions with the winds, you must expect the flooding issues with our rivers, riverines, and tributaries. Therefore, please, folks who live in low-lying areas, and we all know the low-lying areas, please attend to your livestock, your valuables, your belongings, and ensure that your electricity and other things are maintained. We know that we're going to have water turbidity, and we're going to have to close plants if the rainfall affects us and the mud and turbulence hits the waters. So you can expect that you're going to have water problems. The cleanup exercise is one that begins after the event has subsided. All first responders at the disaster management units, at fire services, at TTPS, at the emergency response numbers for ambulances, etc., are all activated, and therefore first responders will be there. If there are trees that hit electrical lines, we cannot clear those until TNTEC has isolated. So bear in mind that there is a process. The most important thing is to please pay attention to the many locations that we have for sandbag distribution. We have thousands of sandbags on standby, and we have had them for quite some time now. There was a slow pickup of those events. The Ministry of Trade has advised that over 100+ vessels are headed southward into Trinidad waters, and that they have arranged for coordination for receipt of those vessels, etc. So we're expecting an influx of vessels coming in. The Ministry of Energy this morning reported on their preparedness and their advice to the oil and gas sector and other service providers. We expect to see on the East Coast and North Coast very rough seas, and that may very well come into the Gulf of Paria, particularly the north end of the Gulf of Paria, according to the Meteorological Services Center. We will be closely monitoring traffic flows, etc. And again, just to inform that the Minister of Education, after advice a little bit later in the coordinating entity, will, during the course of this afternoon, give us further information on what we can expect via schools in Trinidad. Tobago will speak to schools in the island of Tobago. We are please reminding that while we have a few hours of preparatory time, if you see something, say something. This is particularly along your river embankments, your tributaries. Last year, during the flooding event in August, one neighbor's drain was blocked by a bin, which the community apparently noticed for weeks, but nobody moved the plastic bin. Houses were inundated with up to 4 to 6 feet of water. So if you see something in your neighborhood, folks, please, today is the day to exercise some self-help and to please prepare. Remember to secure your valuables and belongings, and for us to make the best use of the daylight hours ahead of us so that we can be prepared. All agencies, all 14 disaster management units, all coordinate entities are ready, and we will be engaged in the full receipt of the system and then the events that follow after. Remember, flooding is something that occupies after the event, so let's get ready for it, and that should pretty much put us into position. I think Minister Sinanan wishes to address us further on another matter.
Yes, just to correct any misinterpretation of what I just said, Carl is putting on additional flights. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who wants to come from Tobago will be able to be accommodated. However, they are putting on additional flights and to try to move as much people as possible once the weather condition remains the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's now turn to the members of the media who have joined us virtually. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. I would ask the members of the media to identify themselves by name and the media house you represent. Can I also ask that we restrict our questions to the topic at hand today, and in the first instance, restrict yourselves to only 2 questions in the first instance, and of course, we will come back to you. And also to use the hands up feature on Zoom so we know who is asking questions. I am seeing the first hand up that we have is from Priya Bihari, so let's go to Priya directly.
Good afternoon, Priya Bihari, AZP News. My first question is for Minister Alwari. Minister Alwari, in terms, I know you spoke about schools, and right under the Minister, our education would get answer that later. But what about the public sector? Is there going to be any announcement regarding them, and also maybe any advice you may have for workplaces in the private sector also? And my second question is for Mr. Big. Mr. Big, you said that this hurricane historic because it happened so early. So should we expect a little more of these, in this season? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Priya for your question. Priya, we in the public service are the first responders, so we will all be turning up to work. If we don't come to work, Trinidad and Tobago falls flat. So it's not our first time in this dance. All public servants are required to be at work because we are the ones that have to engage in the emergency services. And in fact, I can tell you that we have encamped all of our teams last night, tonight. They will all be, in fact, resident at the ministry. So we are in all of our disaster management units already physically occupying space, and we'll be there at midnight because emergencies really don't have respect for people's traditional hours. As it relates to schooling, that's a matter that the Minister of Education is in the middle of coordinating. Obviously, she has to balance the positions of any exams that are still in the system and other factors. So we have to be very careful about it, but there will be advance warning as soon as possible. The private sector, we have lived through a pandemic, we've lived through storm warnings, we've lived through lots of things. The private sector is free to engage in its own arrangements insofar as we must prepare. If you have a high-rise building or a low-rise building that is going to be affected, you look at rains. Please make sure your electrical equipment is in order, your elevator shafts have sandbags, for instance, etc. So now is the time to take advanced preparatory steps, particularly because between now and nightfall, we have hours ahead of us that we can use productively. To Mr. Big. You're on mute.
And let me...
Got you. You're good now. Yes.
Thank you very much, Minister. And let me thank Mr. Bihari for that very interesting question. And the answer is yes. This is a hurricane that will go down on records. As we speak, there's new information coming out of the National Hurricane Center, and the maximum sustained winds within the system rose from 195 when I did my initial briefing a few minutes ago, and it's now 215 kilometers per hour. As a result of this, Hurricane Beryl is now a Category 4 hurricane. The hurricane is expected to strengthen in the coming hours as it approaches the island. So we're preparing for a very powerful hurricane striking the southern Windward Islands in the upcoming hours. what we have been noticing, not only in the region, and this is research that has been done at a global level, is that the climate is changing. The World Meteorological Organization did a meta-analysis of temperature data collected from around the world in 2023. And the findings revealed that 2023 was the hottest year on record. They continued their gathering of temperature data over the last 6 months, and the data that they've gathered for 2024 all points in the direction that this year will surpass the record of 2023, and 2024 is set to become the hottest year on record. I say this because the temperature is changing, the climate is changing, the sea surface temperature is also rising. And these systems that form over the Atlantic Ocean derive their energy from the warm ocean temperature. And so if the oceans are providing higher temperatures, this is obviously going to drive the development of more powerful storms. And so the forecast is, once these temperatures continue to rise, the atmosphere and the climate continues to change. And we're seeing this, all of the data that we have gathered, all of the scientific research and evidence is pointing in this direction of changing climates and rising temperatures. We will see the development of more powerful storms and hurricanes, to such an extent that the National Hurricane Center is actually contemplating creating another category for these hurricanes above Category 5 in anticipation of the development of more powerful storms. So yes, Mr. Bihari, in the coming years, once climate change continues and we who live on this planet do absolutely nothing about it, we will see the development of more powerful hurricanes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Big. Let's go to our next member of the media. I believe it's Cindy Raghubar Singh. Cindy, you have a question?
In terms of public sector workers, might have been like licensing, immigration, passport appointments. Those types of workers are not really the corporation, and those obviously we expect to be out during a weather like this. So if you could just clarify with those type of public sector workers. My questions, Mr. Big. So yes, the National Hurricane Center did, updated to a Cat 4 hurricane, calling it extremely dangerous. And what I'd like you to just clarify a little bit for the public, in their updates, they've been calling this upgraded weather system one that has life-threatening winds and very dangerous storm surge. So just to put into context what that would mean for us, having some amount of the impact here, life-threatening winds and that storm surge. I saw the Minister of Finance make a post about close to 100 boats coming down into our water, and that to shelter from the storm. Is it customary that these vessels come into our waters in conditions like this? And when he says the government is preparing to accommodate them, could you just explain what we plan to do with these 100 or so vessels, which of course likely means more than that in people? So what does that mean exactly in terms of how are we going to accommodate and help these people coming in with these vessels? And is that a normal situation? Are these people, as a result of the World Cup taking place, do we have accommodations or things in place for tourists and people who would have come to the country and higher up the chain as a result of the World Cup? Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. That's a very wide-ranging series of important questions. Relative to public servants, everybody's required to turn out to work tomorrow. It's rather complicated to separate services that are required. So while somebody might be attending to an event that is a passport related event with additional people coming in to our borders, etc., there is a distribution of resources away from points. So all public servants, we're all first responders. We're all required to be at work, and it is too complicated to divide it into smaller parts to say who is essential or who is not at this particular point in time. The Ministry of Trade and Industry put out a press release about an hour ago, specifically on the welcoming of maritime vessels due to the passage of Beryl. In that press release, they have provided the numbers of over 100 vessels being en route to Trinidad and Tobago. So I think perhaps the Minister of Finance, in the coordination with Customs end, was reflecting upon that. In terms of organization, there's a series of organizing events for maritime vessels. First of all is safe anchorage, and then of course it's the matter of making sure that the vessels are serviced in whatever fashion that they have. But that is a usual process. What we expect is just a higher volume, perhaps longer waiting times, etc. Remember, national security is always an issue at events and times like this. So Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of National Security will all be involved with Ministry of Works and Transport. We have the Maritime Division, Customs, Immigration, and the usual players that will work on that particular aspect. So that will continue as per usual. Your other question, I think, relates to the realm that Mr. Baig would have, unless Minister of Works and Transport wishes to join on anything at this point.
No, just to say that vessels coming down into our region during challenges like this is a normal thing. We do consider ourselves as a safe area in terms of the maritime sector for the protection of vessels during the hurricane season. So this is nothing new for us.
In fact, I can confirm from my colleague, the Attorney General in Grenada, that the information is that Grenada has just declared a state of emergency in respect of its affairs. So we would expect to see that maritime influx come into Trinidad, and we are A, aware of it, and B, putting things into effect. In fact, just yesterday I was in coordinated discussions with several of my colleagues in relation to the number of persons at Shagarama seeking to have their documentation processed, etc. So that work is afoot.
Let's go to Director Baig now.
Thank you very much, Minister. And the question is a really important one with respect to the descriptors that the National Hurricane Center would utilize for these hurricanes. Whenever a hurricane reaches up to Category 3, the National Hurricane Center will describe this hurricane as being major, right? And Category 3 is that hurricane where we have the maximum sustained winds between 178 to 208 kilometers per hour. They have discovered that at this time, as we speak, the maximum sustained winds within Hurricane Beryl has reached up to 215 kilometers, and so it is now categorized as being extremely dangerous and in Category 4. Of course, the National Hurricane Center has advised, and we're in full alignment with this advice, and we would also wish to spread this advice across the region, that the winds having reached up to beyond 200 kilometers per hour is what will be considered as being life-threatening, right? So these winds will, stir up the oceans, and Minister did mention this in his opening remarks. We're in for some rough seas. We will feel the effects here in Trinidad as well to a lesser extent, but our colleagues in Tobago and in Grenada and its dependencies, and a little bit north of this as well, as we take into consideration the northern periphery of the hurricane, did all experience storm surges, which are extremely dangerous, to the maritime and to the shores, etc. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Baig. Let's go back to, I believe Prior has some follow-up questions, so let's go back to Prior.
Yes, good morning again. My question is for Mr. Sinan. Mr. Sinan, I'm told that that there works being done on the Cunupia River. Would that works affect maybe the free flow of the water now, or is the ministry aware of this? And do you have any plans in place for that? Thank you. The Cunupia River. Thanks.
So we do have work going on around Trinidad at this time. Our drainage division would have started the execution of work which runs throughout the dry season into the rainy season, and then sometimes go back into the dry season next year. So there's work going on around the country and most of the major water courses, and so as part of our program of works, we are aware of that work there, and the team are looking at it to ensure that, you know, if we have to put in temporary measures to ensure that the water is flowing, that they are monitoring that. So wherever there's work going on, we would consider the fact that we are going to get a downpour. Again, flooding has to do with the volume of rainfall and the capacity of the channels. One of the things that we have been eagerly looking at the past couple of years is to ensure that we have a very fast runoff, even though the infrastructure would have been challenged. And so far we have been doing a good job at that in most of the areas. So we are looking at the area, we are aware of it, and something will be put in place for that area.
Thank you, Minister. Let's go to Cindy Raghubar Tika Singh. Cindy?
Hi, thank you. So the minister did say a little earlier that flooding is inevitable. We're going to get flooding. And with yesterday's weather, we would have seen fallen trees, down lines, power outages, that kind of thing. Can the Ministry of Local Government say if there are enough, equipment to cut trees, clear roadways, get equipment and people in time to allow for the restoration of, electricity and that kind of thing? And finally, I forgot to ask earlier, we have been seeing panic buying already. A lot of groceries fill, people stocking up on emergency supplies. And given that we're also having this high maritime traffic, can anyone just explain in terms of security measures, are we going to see the Army come out, Coast Guard, that kind of thing, to make sure there's calm nationwide?
Thank you,
Thank
Cindy. Your question involves the coordination of several agencies. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, with the 14 disaster management units at the 14 regional corporations, have already been in coordination with the other first responders. That's fire services, Ministry of Health, Trinidad and Tobago Municipal Police Service, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and the TTDF. All of those participants have been in our meetings over the several days. We have in fact already identified and named all locations for chainsaws and other positions. So we are sharing assets with brother and sister agencies as we speak. There are ongoing works. TNTech, as you would have noticed, has been very busy over the many months preceding today in line clearage and positions, etc. What we want people to please bear in mind, because we're all now familiar with how flooding works, it's the after effect that's going to be very painful. The duration of the event is to make sure that winds, folks remember these winds, Minister Gonzalez was just pointing out to me the severity of the winds. These winds are expected to be extremely high. So what we have to do is to make sure that life is preserved by people being sensible. Glass panes, trees that may fall, where you park your cars, where you have your homes if they're under trees, etc. We want to be careful, to be prudent about what you could see as a risk around you. That involves self-preparation to identify what may be a risk. In the flooding inevitability that will come, we don't want to see people with livestock say, well, I didn't know and therefore I lost 3,000 chickens, or I didn't move my herd of pigs or sheep or other positions to a safer location. We have to expect in the traditional flood zones, Bamboo number 1, number 2, number 3, El Socorro, parts of Cuba, Tavaki, Talparo, woodlands, etc. In some of the low-lying areas at Guaracara River and Cipero River in San Fernando, we are going to see the effect of water and runoff, high tide and low tide. Even if you had massive drains and potentials, runoff is going to be affected by soil saturation, high tide and low tide, and immense volume of water. So therefore, turning off your breakers, making sure electricity supply is managed, moving your cars to the locations that we are identifying as available. We've already had several sites identified. We will pitch that information out. Self-help is required at this point. As to TNTech and WASA's positions, Minister Gonzalez has command of that, and WASA has already reported. Their response will come. Ministry of Works and Transport has located, as it does, with its own assets, together with rural development's assets, corporations' assets, and all contractors that are involved in construction, assets right along the north coast and in usual areas, so that when landslides happen, we let the slide happen. We try to avoid, if we can, if we see an area of prejudice right now, the slide has to happen, and then we can only move in to remedy that situation when there's advice as to soil stability. And if there are electrical lines that are down, we have to have TNTech's cooperation for the isolation of lines and positions. You know, people often say, well, boy, we just had rain and flood in Trinidad and WASA had no water. Because of water turbidity, you're going to have the filters at the water treatment plants under pressure. You got to stop the water treatment, clean the filters, reignite the systems. So storing your water is critical at this point. It's not our first time that we're dealing with these events, but we have a few hours ahead of us that we wish to use as productively as possible. What we're assisting in informing today is that the ministries and the government with all agencies are in effect. You have asked a very important question about security. TTDF and Coast Guard, being a division of the TTDF, is already in gear. Maritime Services is in gear. Customs is in gear. Immigration is in gear with respect to the vessels that are coming towards us. And that is something that we have engaged in since 2 days ago, not just today. So there's been a lot of preparatory work that we have engaged in, but that does not mean that we can stop the rain. We're going to have to manage the phenomenon, and we want to make sure we manage it carefully. Thank you.
Let's go again to Prior Bihari. Prior.
Yes, thank you. If someone wants to get sandbags, how do they go about it? And secondly, if someone has like branches that need to be cut, can they get that cut before the bad weather comes in? Thank you.
Sandbags, a full distribution listing of all sandbag events will be sent out again. We've been sending it out. Every regional corporation has multiple zones for sandbag distribution. I have confirmed personally with every single corporation that there are thousands of sandbags available. It's a matter of collection. We will have that distributed immediately after this conference, if it hasn't gone out already, the sites and distributions, but they are the respective 14 regional corporations. As to the cutting of trees and positions, it's going to be a resource intensive event. We may not have the resources available between now and nightfall to attend to every position possible, but you can reach out to the regional corporations as well as to fire services for identification of areas that are of concern. That will assist us in prioritizing how we deploy the resources in this regard. Just to remind you that the CERT volunteers, which number several thousand that we have trained over the last 2 years, are all engaged and on board with the mop-up and clean-up reliefs that we may need to engage in.
Thank you. So I've also received a question from Nicole Dookie, who has joined us live but is having some problems with her audio. And Nicole has asked a question regarding direct line of communications with the media for urgent dissemination of information. Nicole, what I can tell you is that what you are seeing here today is a protocol that has been set up by the Honorable Prime Minister to ensure that the national population is informed as to the key points with regards to our preparation and ongoing issues while we traverse this particular period of time for ourselves. We ensure that our subject matter experts from the Met Service and from the ODPM do join us, and I would encourage you, firstly, along with all other citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to get the information directly from the websites, Facebook pages, social media platforms of those agencies and ministries who are responsible for preparedness and first response. With regards to coordinated information or information that has been derived from a particular ministry, of course you can reach out to that ministry via their communications units or directly to the ministers. Minister Al-Rawi, in times like this, does lead the ministry responsible for first responders and typically is the coordinating minister for these activities. And I, as the Minister of Communications, am always available if you do require information, or if for a particular reason you can't get onto an agency or minister and need that information urgently.
May I join you?
But the population can be assured that as this information is verified and can be brought to the national population, it will be done so in a timely fashion in the format that you see now and carried online and on air, television and radio. And yes, Minister Al-Rawi.
Thank you so much. Just to join Minister, I can confirm that the Ministry of Local Government, that is Rural Development and Local Government, our website has a full listing of all distribution points for sandbags. You can access that right now. Folks, please remember that there is an app available for download at both the App Store and on the Google Store for iOS and for Apple devices, and that is the Local, L-O-C-A-L app. In that, there are a number of features, including the emergency feature where information is being poured. The key website to remember as well will be for the Met Office. Remember, official warnings commence with the Met Office. The final version of their warnings for Hurricane Watch and Storm Watch, that has been already issued. That will be the final one in that format. There will be further information distributed, including in our consultation. Of course, we've been working with TSTT and Digicel with SMS bandwidth and messaging happening as well. We're going to pay attention to traffic ways and circulation, so you can expect that we will be giving information through the Trinidad and Tobago Command Center for the police as it relates to traffic and other coordinations, together with the Ministry of Works and Transport with the Highways Division. So the websites to bear in mind: Rural Development and Local Government, the Meteorological Services of Trinidad and Tobago, any one of the agency websites. Ministry of Health has activated, Ministry of Trade has activated, other websites, Ministry of Works and Transport, the usual sailing and flight times you will see at CAL and the Port Authority, etc. So we have a full suite of services available. Most importantly, now is a time for a lot of self-diagnosis and self-help, and then we reach out broader than that to where we need the resources.
Are there any more questions from the media? Right. Minister Al-Rawi, is there any closing statement you'd like to make?
Yes, please. First of all, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I wish to extend our prayer and support to our brothers and sisters in the CARICOM region. Indeed, as is reported, Grenada is already under a state of emergency, and other islands are going to be bracing for serious difficulties with this unprecedentedly strong hurricane. That's our first order of priority. Secondly, as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago, please pay attention to the Chief Secretary's press release and conference that will happen somewhere around 2:30 to 3. With respect to the island of Trinidad, please rest assured that we will be in coordination with Tobago fully. Chief Secretary has an open line to us, and indeed we've spoken already today. As it relates to Trinidad, we've had rain, soils are saturated, expect more rain. Please be wary of the severity of winds. The Met Office asked me earlier to stress the sea conditions, and you heard Mr. Big warn about what the Americans so easily talk about, storm surges. So we have to pay attention to the seas. Self-help and self-identification, Feel free, ladies and gentlemen, to walk out your house, take a look at the drains around you and in your neighborhood. If you see something, today's a good day to get a little exercise. Let's just do it. If you can't handle it yourself, reach out to the regional corporations. Our first responders are on standby. I want to assure you we're in high level of alert and functionality, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, under the Honorable Prime Minister's direction as he coordinates all of us taking our respective leads at this point, we are paying very close attention, and we will be working for the benefit of all of our citizens. May God help us always. We offer our prayers and gratitude to him, and let us be each other's brothers and sisters, keepers and watchers. And let's do this the way we can, which is the best way we know in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's together.
Minister Gonzalez or Minister Sinanan, any closing remarks from you?
Just to assure the people of Trinidad and Tobago that our public utilities agencies are all mobilized and they're on standby to be able to respond to any impact on our water, electricity, or telecommunication infrastructure as a result of the impact of Hurricane Beryl. Just to assure you that the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Services is in fact working with their colleagues at the National Hurricane Center to provide real-time update to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We will ensure that as new information comes to hand, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the Eastern Caribbean, who depend on the support of our TTMS, our Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, will be provided with the appropriate information so that they can take precautionary measures to protect themselves and their families, and to caution the people of Trinidad and Tobago and all our stakeholders to be very guarded about misinformation that are geared towards creating unnecessary panic in our population. We are on standby to provide you with all of the necessary updates. Pay close attention to authorized government agencies, or TTMS, ODPM, etc. And we will keep you updated as new information comes to hand. But the Ministry of Public Utilities and all of its agencies are highly mobilized to provide the necessary support and to be able to restore normalcy to our utility infrastructure post the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I endorse what my colleagues would have said, and just to say we have been here before, we will get through this. Let's all work together and be our brothers' keepers. Thank you.
Thank you, ministers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an unfortunate reality that during times of crisis, the person sometimes for the best of intentions, but all too often for unproductive reasons known only to themselves, utilize the high emotional state that the country gets into for unproductive means. In doing that, they share incorrect, unverified, and dangerous information that can create panic in the population. I hope you've gotten a sense from the ministers who have joined us today, as well as the heads of the Met Service and ODPM, that while we do have a serious time ahead of us, that we must prepare, there is no need to panic. What you have seen today is a continuation of a whole of government approach to ensure that not only do we inform the population as to our level of preparedness and the things that are being done across our various ministries and agencies, but also that the ministries themselves are working and continue to work to ensure that the population remains safe, that they are prepared, and that you are informed. I urge you to only get information from and share information from authorized agencies and ministries. In this instance, I will ask you to follow the websites and social media pages of the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, the Ministries of Works and Transport, Public Utilities, National Security, Education, housing and urban development, agriculture, land and fisheries, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago government communications, and TTT On Live on air as state media will also be sharing all verified information in a timely fashion to keep the population updated. I thank all my colleague ministers who have joined me today. I thank Director Big, retired Major General Smart, and of all the members of the media who joined us today, and you, the viewing and listening public, online and on air. The government will come to you in a timely fashion if that is necessary and when it is necessary to update you on any further matters that require dissemination directly to you. You can look forward to that, and we will be coming back to you, as I said, in a timely manner. Thank you.
This is TTT, Live for Local.